All right, we're live. I got a good connection now, so everything's going to work out just fine, I think. Yes. All right. Today we are in Esther. We're getting close to the end of Esther. We're in chapters 7 and 8 today. And our little title of our sermon is Revelations. For good or bad, revelations are something that God takes part in pretty regularly. He gives us, Yvette and I were talking about this the other day, that God gives us little snippets of things that He wants us to pay attention to. Doesn't always make a lot of sense to us at the outset, but He brings information to us that causes us to do things, say things differently than we might have if we didn't have that information. I know just in my walk with God, it's over the course of my life, I've had, ups and downs as far as how close I was with God. There were times when I was about as distant from Him as I could be. But God was really faithful to give me little snippets, sometimes in a dream, sometimes in however He chose to reveal it to me, to show me things, and then I would get to see those things. They weren't commonplace. They weren't things that were expected, but they were something that would be, if it occurred to you, a unique experience, but not something that you could look for in your everyday, in your day-to-day. And this is something that I really love about this part of, really all of Esther, is that God does this with His people, but He also does it with a pagan king. And he's developed a habit of that over Israel, everything, from the, Joshua on. God has made a habit of revealing things to His people that they weren't expecting and couldn't just look for. But when they occurred, these people knew without any shadow of a doubt that this was exactly what God had said. This is what was going to take place. This was how things were going to go, because God had designed it that way. This part of Esther has some really important revelations. It has some revelations for, I don't want to say destructive purposes, but it has some revelations toward the removal of evil in a situation and toward the good of His people, if you will, all across the board. And it's really important that we see these things as godly revelations, because even though it's coming through a person, whether it's through the person of Esther or what have you, there's a pagan king in place that God is using His people to influence for His will. And that's how God works, whether He's dealing with someone who doesn't believe in Him and doesn't serve Him, or dealing with someone who does and who has given their life to Him, and whether they're in a good place in their relationship with Him or whether they're in a poor place, God is going to continue to reveal Himself to His kids, and He's going to show us truth, because God is love. God is the embodiment of love. Truth is God's mode of communication. So truth and love can be equated. When there's an old, I've heard Christian comedians talk about things like, saying something to your fellow believers. I'm going to tell you this in love. That, you think you're revealing some big important truth to them, but when somebody hears that statement, they're not thinking to themselves, oh, you're going to say something and I'm going to feel loved. When you say that phrase, people are going to go, oh, what are you going to hit me with now? Like life hasn't already hit me enough. Now you've got to hit me with some of your truth. But the fact is, you'll know when somebody speaks real truth to you, you'll know you're being loved in that, because the truth is an expression of love. And it's not meant to be harmful. It's meant to be informational and awakening. It is meant to draw us to the source of all truth, who is God. So we're going to get into this today. We're going to discuss some revelations of truth and what their impact was on the situation and on God's people as a whole. But let's pray first. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this day and this time and this place. Thank you for Mike and Sherry and Under His Wings and this blessed environment that we can come into. We can feel your spirit here. We know that you're present with us. We don't have to claim where 2 or 3 are gathered in your name, you're there, because we can feel you here. You are here among us, and we love you for that. I pray that you would extend that to the people that are listening to this online, wherever they might be, that they might, through this recording and through their efforts to study your word and to know you better, to understand that you're in the room with them. And that's a big deal, because when you're in the room, Satan can't be. We are in a safe place when we're with you. So I pray that you would bless us today as we study your word. Empty me of myself so that your spirit can overflow to every ear that listens, so that your truth can express your love for us. Thank you so much for all that you have blessed us with, that you have done for us, that you're in the midst of, and that you are going to continue to accomplish in our lives until you return again or take us home. And we'll give you all the praise and the glory in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. First of all, everybody here, everybody online, thank you for your prayers. This last week was a tough one. Last Sunday, Saturday night, Sunday morning, I was really desperately ill. I was not in a good place at all. My heart was pounding. I was hard to breathe. I wasn't going numb or anything like that. It was just a combination of the change in weather and the various different pollens from the plants that were springing up, and my body was reacting poorly to it. And it took until the end of the day on Wednesday for me to really clear up and feel better. And of course, then Thursday, I had to spend all day driving back and forth from Safford to get college boy off to school. And he's there and blessed, and he's excited and nervous and homesick and everything else that you get when you go away to college for the first time. But we love him, and we're praying for him, and we're available for him, obviously. But we're very pleased to know from his own little message this morning that he's checking out the little campus church there at EAC, and he wants to see if that's a place worth going on Sunday, because he's gotten a taste for being in a place where he can get God's wisdom from God's word, and he wants more. That's what truth does. That's what truth does. I'm so proud of that kid. I really am. He's not even my own, but he is. He's my bonus son. And I love him to death. So, John, you're doing great, buddy. We love you. The book of Esther, so far we've gotten through 6 chapters of it. And it's kind of a little roller coaster. It's kind of a little, there's ups and downs. This young lady with no expectation of anything other than her being a member of the house of Israel in exile, and all of a sudden, she's the queen. She's the queen of a pagan nation. And we talked about her instruction that she got from Mordecai, her love for Mordecai, her love for God, her trust in him, her attitude about all of that. And Mordecai's when she was expressing fear, Mordecai's little encouragement, that phrase, for such a time as this, is so important, because we here now today, we are in a for such a time as this moment. We don't know when the day or the time that Jesus is going to come back, but the fact is, we know that it's coming at some point. So right now, this moment in future, this moment in time, well, now it's past, is the closest that we've ever been to when Jesus is coming back. And we can see the evidence of the things that he's talked about, the wars and the rumors of wars, the storms and the earthquakes and the natural disasters in weird places that we've never experienced before in our lifetimes. Volcanoes that are blowing up that haven't blown up for 200, 300, 400 years. Tsunamis that are caused by underground, underwater volcanoes that are wiping out coastal areas. It's nuts. But we are living for such a time as this. And we have been commissioned, very especially, in a way that Israel was many, many, many generations ago, that we have been put in this place and time by God for a reason. And this is it. We're going to see the difference that God's revelation makes in a pagan king. We're going to see the difference that it makes in the nation of Israel. And we're going to see how it applies to us today and what we need to be on the lookout for. I'm going to start at the end of chapter 6. Haman got embarrassed. Haman the deceiver, he got embarrassed. He had a big idea that he was going to be doing all of this to get rid of Mordecai and to bury the Jews, and he wanted them gone. And then Esther knows about this, so she creates a little plan and she's honoring him. But then all of this is churning in the king's mind, and the king remembers over the course of a sleepless night, hey, wait a minute. There was a guy who did something really, really marvelous for me. What did we ever do for him? What did we ever do for Mordecai to honor him for saving my life? Well, nothing. Well, then we got to do something. Well, Haman had just arrived in the king's court. He was there. He was going to go right to the king and say, hey, let's hang this guy up on this. Let's stick him up on this giant pike in front of my house, 50 feet in the air, or 75 feet, whatever it was. And see how, I think this is a great idea. Well, he showed up just in time for the king to look out the window and go get Haman. I'm gonna get some information from him. So Haman comes in. The king says, hey, what would you do if you had someone important that you really wanted to honor in a kingly fashion? And Haman goes, oh boy, it's gonna be me. It's gonna be me. Oh, put a crown on him and put a robe on him and ride him through the streets on one of your great war horses and proclaim to everybody that can see that this is a man, that this is what happens to the man the king wants to honor. Oh, it's such a good idea. And he gives it, and the king says, awesome, you go do that for Mordecai. Ha! He probably didn't have that reaction outwardly, but in his soul he was going, no! So he does it. He obeys, and then he runs home afterwards with his head covered. He's ashamed. He's mad. He's conferring with his cronies and his wife about, oh, I can't believe it. This is such a bad thing. So now Esther has invited for banquet number 2. Banquet number 2. So he does this, and now in chapter 7, we're going to get a little bit further along in the mystery of the story. That the kids in the van are about to pull the mask off the guy in the monster suit. It's Scooby-Doo. Sorry. I went there. I'm a Gen X. I can live with it. So, Esther chapter 7, starting right in verse 1. Now the king and Haman came to drink wine with Esther, the queen. And the king said to Esther on their second day also, as they drank their wine at the banquet, what is your petition, Queen Esther? It shall be granted to you. And what is your request? Even to half the kingdom, it shall be done. Then Queen Esther replied, if I have found favor in your sight, O king, and if it pleases the king, let my life be given me as my petition, and my people as my request. For we have been sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, to be killed, and to be annihilated. Now, if we had only been sold as slaves, men and women, I would have remained silent, for the trouble would not be commensurate with the annoyance to the king. Then King Ahasuerus asked Queen Esther, who is he, and where is he who would presume to do this? The king loves Esther. It may be against his better judgment. It may be against standard operating procedure. But the king, used to being the king, used to having a queen and name and title and whatever, the most beautiful woman, he is in love with Esther now. The king has come to the place where Esther is every bit as important to his heart as she is to his kingdom. So he wants her to be happy, and he does not want her to be distressed about anything. And he finds out somebody is plotting to kill my wife and my queen and all of her people. Who? Where is he? The king's mad. The king's mad, and it says so. But I can imagine right about now, who is he? And where is he? As any good hubby would do, and I've come real close to doing on an occasion or two, who is it? Who do I need to go have a come to Jesus moment with? You know? And by come to Jesus, I mean I'm going to send him there. And he can talk with him face to face. The king is mad. He is not happy. Who is he? Where? I'm sorry, I lost my place there. Yeah, I got to find the 6 though. I should have my reading glasses. Who is he, and where is he, who would presume to do thus? Esther said, a foe and an enemy is this wicked Haman. Bang, right there. Bonk, the finger has been pointed. The words have been said. It's out. And Haman can't deny it because he's the one that came to the king and snuck this stuff up under his nose to get his seal of approval on. He knows he's nailed. Then Haman became terrified before the king and queen. The king arose in his anger from drinking wine and went into the palace garden. This is somebody, most pagan kings aren't treated as necessarily wise or full of discernment, anything like that. They're usually, the picture is painted of them as the conqueror, the overtaker, the person who brings Israel into exile out of their home, because it happened a lot. But this king is highlighted for some of his wisdom and his discernment, and I believe with my whole heart that this king, if he had been discussed in any other part of the Bible, in any other circumstances, he would have been discussed just like every other king. He's a conqueror, he's a despot, he's a pagan, he doesn't believe in God. This king has been being influenced by his queen and her people around him for a good number of years now. And even if he's not serving God, he's serving God's purposes. He has allowed his heart to be softened to the point where, even though he doesn't really understand it, he's paying attention to what God's intent is. He knows that there are good things happening in his kingdom because of his relationship with his queen. And by extension, her people, whoever they may be. It hasn't been revealed to him yet. But she's in the process of revealing it right now. These revelations that are coming to him are causing him, over the pattern that he's developed over the last 7-8 years, whatever it's been, they're causing him to stop, even in the middle of drinking. Him and his best buddy are getting drunk with the queen, or they're getting drunk in the same room as the queen. And he's even in that place, he has the ability to stop and sit back and remove himself from a situation where, if he had wanted to, he could have gone over to his throne, grabbed his sword, and went shwak, and Haman was done, just like that. But he left the room. He removed himself from the anger. He removed himself from the situation, and that was wise, because when you do that, it allows God to speak into the situation. It allows his spirit to touch our spirit and say, pause. Your emotions are real, but it doesn't mean they're correct. Pause, take a breath, trust me. And we hear it. We as believers, we understand what's going on. The king might not have understood it, but after so many years of being with Queen Esther, he understood the value of that step back, of that stop and think, because a better answer will come. He might have wanted to commit immediate violence against Haman and just have it done and then explain it later in a royal edict or something like that. But he stepped back because there was more that God had to do in this situation. He stepped back and he waited, took a breath, got a little bit of clear air in his lungs and in his head so he could clear out all that red vision, that blood vision that you get when you get really angry. So he steps out. He does that. He leaves the room. Now, this is great. This is absolutely great. The king arose in his anger from drinking wine and went out into the palace garden. But Haman stayed to beg for his life from Queen Esther, for he saw that harm had been determined against him by the king. Imagine you've known this king for probably all of your adult life. You've understood who he is. You got in good with him. You got into his courts. You're one of his top guys. So you know the king. You understand him. You know his postures. You know his facial expressions. You know a lot about him. You're familiar with him. The king didn't say anything to Haman. The king probably did this. Dad face. That one that my dad used to give me that meant, if you don't shut up now, it's going to be worse. It's already bad, but if you don't shut up now, it's going to be worse. And I recognized dad face, and I practiced mine. And all of my kids recognize my dad face. I can do it from across a room. I can snap my fingers like that in a crowded room, and all 4 of my adult children will go. They will, they'll hear that snap. And if they look at me and see this, they stop whatever they're doing. They stop whatever they're saying. My oldest daughter's 30. She's kind of broken out of that. All the rest of them, all I got to do is snap and stare. And they know they're in trouble. They know there's a problem. The king, guarantee you, turned and looked at Haman and went. And Haman's like, I'm dead. I'm dead. I'm dead. The king gets up. Haman's probably going, gripping the edge of the table, not sure what to do. The king walks out. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Queen Esther, please! He immediately. So there's all this emotion going on right here in the middle of all this. And I love that there's a Jewish tradition. It's not truly a factoid that they have from anywhere or a revelation in particular. But in Jewish tradition, they say that the Archangel Michael was in the room. Because the Archangel Michael is the one that is the guardian, the warrior. He's the one that's there for whatever violence God is going to allow to let this situation proceed. Well, he's there. There's no immediate need for violence, the war the little bitty war that's going to happen in this room between good and evil. So in Jewish tradition, the Archangel Michael pushed Haman. When he was coming over to Esther to plead for his life, he went, boop. And that was when Haman, I'll read it to you right now. Let's see here. Now, when the king returned from the palace garden into the place where they were drinking wine, Haman was falling on the couch where Esther was. So he came right in, right at the right time to see Haman basically physically moving with purpose toward his queen. Then the king said, will he even assault the queen with me in the house? Hey, there's no hope. Haman knows there's no hope. He's done. As the word went out of the king's mouth, they covered Haman's face. He probably on his way back into the room from the garden, he grabbed his 2 guards and he said, get ready for an execution. There's one coming right now. And so he had his guards follow him back in the room. As soon as he said that, as soon as the word went out of the king's mouth, they covered his face. Executioner's hood over his head. This guy's, he's never going to see the light of day again. Never going to see the light of day again. They got his face covered. Then Harbonah, one of the eunuchs who were before the king, said, behold, indeed, the gallows standing at Haman's house, 50 cubits high, 50 cubits, 75 feet. Giant pike in front of his house set up. Behold, indeed, the gallows standing at Haman's house, 50 cubits high, which Haman made for Mordecai, who spoke good on behalf of the king. So they could probably see that 75-foot tall spire from the window, whatever window they were next to. This guy probably went, look, he even built a pike to spike this guy up on. The guy who saved your life, the guy who you just honored. And the king said, hang him on it. No exclamation point, no emphasis, no embellishment. Hang him on it. Easy as that. The king has spoken. Didn't have to be loud. It didn't have to be rowdy. It didn't have to be performed with a flourish and a sword and the rage of the king. He said, hang him on it. Hang him up and stick him up there. Spike him on it. Didn't raise his voice, didn't lose his temper. So they hanged Haman on the gallows, which he had prepared for Mordecai, and the king's anger subsided. The king received a revelation. And the result of that revelation was the removal of evil, not just from influence on his queen and potentially her people, but from his court. This was a trusted advisor. This was a man who he had a relationship with over probably decades. And he could have raged and chopped his head off and, had him drawn and quartered and everything else. And then there would have been, big political intrigue about everything and lots of explanations and lots of papyrus work that went along with it. And sorry, I can't help myself. But he took that moment of discernment to step away from the table, to step out into the garden, to take a breath, and to let God work. And God revealed to him through Michael's push, I don't think that's really what happened, but we humans are clumsy enough on our own. He probably went stumbling into his own death just because he was so nervous and keyed up and had the adrenaline pumping. But the fact is, the king received some very, very important revelations, not just for his kingdom, but for his relationships. And if he had reacted in rage, he would not have received those revelations. The whole city received a revelation twice, because once was Haman pulling Mordecai around on the horse saying, this is what the king does for the man that he chooses to honor. So he's revealing already that Mordecai is someone that the king loves and blesses. And now it turns out the guy that was leading the horse in the first place was a traitor and trying to manipulate the king. So he got the pike that they could see from the king's window. Once Haman was up on it, everybody in town could see it. 75 feet in the air. In that day and age, they weren't building 10-story skyscrapers. The tallest building was probably the palace, and it might have been 3 stories tall. That probably had some sort of basement level or something like that. But the fact is, everybody in the city could see what happened with Mordecai and then what happened with Haman. So God revealed himself and his truth to the king. God revealed himself and his truth to the people of the city, this pagan city where Hebrews were exiles. They weren't even part of the main thrust of the people in that city. They weren't part of the population, if you will. They were add-ons. They were brought in. They benefited everybody around them from their presence because they were people of character. They were hard workers. They did what they needed to do to succeed, to survive and thrive. And the result was that it helped everybody around them. That was always the case when Israel was in exile. But these people, this entire kingdom, at least in this city, in the city of Susa, got to view God's revelation of how things were going to proceed. And we'll read even more about that at the end of this next chapter. So, he spiked Haman up on the spike, and his anger subsided. So, chapter 8, verse 1. On that day, same day, King Ahasuerus gave the house of Haman, the enemy of the Jews, to Queen Esther. That doesn't just mean, here's the keys to his house. You can have his house, royal house, whatever that he's been holed up in. Giving her his house meant she got everything, control and ownership of everything in his household, including the people. That included his wife and his 10 sons and all of this other influence and everything else. The king said, "It's yours. Do what you want with it." So now we're going to get a little revelation to Haman's inner circle, his family, his wife, his sons, his cronies. They're going to get a little revelation. To get the enemy of the Jews, to Queen Esther, and Mordecai came before the king, for Esther had disclosed what he was to her. At that point, Esther has said, Mordecai is my cousin. He's the man who raised me. He's a Jew. I'm a Jew. My people are the Jews. Here's what's been going down under your nose. She revealed it to him then. The king took off his signet ring, which he had taken away from Haman. Smart king, the guy going off to get executed with the king's ring on his finger. That might not look all that good. So he got his signet ring from Haman, and he took it off and gave it to Mordecai. So that favor passed from the evil guy who wanted all the Jews dead to the guy who was probably the most respected among the Jews in amongst their exile within this other people. He gives him his signet ring. That basically says, number one guy, this is my right-hand man right here. Bang. He gets the ring. He doesn't have to kiss it anymore. He's wearing it. Y'all have to kiss the ring because he's the one that's got it on, and I'm going to make sure that he's honored. Now this is a revelation to Mordecai. Not anything that he was ever expecting. He saved the king's life because it was his duty and his responsibility, not because he thought he would gain favor from it. He taught Esther to conceal her people, not because of anything specific that he knew about their situation, but he knew that it was wisdom for her not to do that at all in the first place, because if she had been revealed as a Jew at the beginning of this process, she might not have even been picked. Despite her beauty and her character and everything else, she was considered part of a broken and damaged and dirty people. So the king might not have even considered her if he knew she was Jewish. So Mordecai had this wisdom and discernment that was built into him by his service to God, by his being God's child and being raised that way, that caused his actions, his attitudes, his words to be trustworthy. It kind of goes back to Ephesians 5, where it talks about I'll go back to Ephesians 5 a lot because there's some really important stuff about how relationships work in there. Mordecai became that trusted voice, the husband, if you will, in that relationship with his people, because he had a reputation and a habit of doing what God needed done, of trusting God and doing it the right way, so that even when his suggestion, very strong suggestion, but even when his idea of don't reveal yourself might have seemed off left to Esther, she trusted him enough in his service to God to understand that he didn't make decisions lightly. So when he decided that and told her, she said, okay, maybe I think that's cuckoo. Maybe I'm not sure what to think of it. Maybe it's weird. But the fact is, I trust Mordecai because I understand his relationship with God, and his relationship with God bleeds into everything he touches. So she trusted him and obeyed him. And as a result, now this revelation to Mordecai of, you have been working toward the advancement of yourself, but by extension, your entire people this whole time. Mordecai simply knew he was being obedient to what he believed God was telling him how to handle this situation. And he was doing what he needed to do. He wasn't trying for self-aggrandizement. He wasn't trying for elevation in the eyes of the king. He was simply doing what he believed was right. And God honored that and revealed it to him in a big, big way. He was honored before all the people, and then he was honored by the king himself in person. And Esther, the end of verse 2, and Esther set Mordecai over the house of Haman. So that's an even bigger. Now, all of his cronies and his sons and wife and everything are all still alive, but now they realize that they have been put in the hand of the man that they sought to murder. Their fate is in his hands, not the king's, not Haman's. Their fate is in Mordecai's hands. They're done. They're probably feeling every bit as much fear as Haman felt in the king's presence when his sin was revealed. Now, his entire household is under the authority of Mordecai, who they were seeking to murder. God has revealed yet another, not only is this guy important to me, but he's important enough that I am going to give him the station that this man previously filled. And so that's revelation to Esther, to Mordecai, to the Jews, and to his entire population of his nation. He's setting this up. Verse 3, then Esther spoke again to the king, fell at his feet, and wept and implored him to avert the evil scheme of Haman the Agagite and his plot which he had devised against the Jews. The king extended the golden scepter to Esther. So Esther arose and stood before the king. Then she said, if it pleases the king, and if I have found favor before him, and the matter seems proper to the king, and I am pleasing in his sight, let it be written to revoke the letters devised by Haman the son of Hammedatha the Agagite, which he wrote to destroy the Jews who are in all the king's provinces. I'm going to pause right there. Esther did a couple real important things. Esther spoke again. Okay? She said, if it pleases the king. She's appealing to his authority. Not just his authority, but his vanity as well, because that comes with the position. The ability to know that the man that you're talking to, the person that you're talking to, is in such a position of authority that it affects their character. Whether or not they intend it to, it does. There's going to be a built-in, he's the king. There's going to be a built-in vanity there. There's going to be a built-in self-importance there because of his position. So she appeals to that first. She says, if it pleases the king, and if I have found favor before him, she's reminding him how often she has found favor with him, and that every time she has, it's turned out good for him. If it pleases the king, and if I have found favor, she's saying, remember, I found favor with you before, and every time you honored that favor, you were right and you were blessed because of it. And before him, and the matters found favor before him, and the matter seems proper to the king. Okay, so yes, you're an authority. Authority figures even make decisions that they question, that they may think back on something and say, they don't reveal that to anybody else, but it's there. Unless you're just plain stark evil, there are going to be times as a leader when the decisions that you make come back on you, and you say, did I do that right? Did I say it right? Was this the right time, the right place, whatever? So she appeals to that. If it seems proper to the king, if you believe that this is a good way to go, then yes. Then this. And the last one, she says, and I am pleasing in his sight. One more little reminder, she already is pleasing in his sight. She's beautiful. That's the main reason he chose her. Her beauty and her character. Her entire beauty. And she's reminding him, I'm right here. And I'm your queen. And I know that I'm your queen primarily because of this and that. But the fact is, I'm still your queen and I'm right here and I'm going to be here. I'm on your side. I am your king. I am, for all intents and purposes, your trophy. But she's a much more valuable trophy than any other queen has been. And if I am pleasing in his sight, let it be written to revoke the letters devised by Haman, the son of Hammedatha the Agagite, which he wrote to destroy the Jews who are in all the king's provinces. Verse 6, for how can I endure to see the calamity which will befall my people, and how can I endure to see the destruction of my kindred? Last appeal to the king is to his heart, which she knows she already has. She has years of experience behind her to know she has the king's heart. And she's not trying to abuse that. She's not trying to use it to make him override his better judgment. She's saying there's emotion attached to this issue. There's emotion attached to you and I, king. But there's emotion between me and these people. There's emotion, there's heart attached to this issue. And it's very important to me. And the king wants to please her. Verse 7, so King Ahasuerus said to Queen Esther and to Mordecai the Jew, behold, I have given the house of Haman to Esther, and him they have hanged on the gallows because he had stretched out his hands against the Jews. Now, there's a little heading in there, but I'm skipping right over it because it all falls right together. Now, you write to the Jews as you see fit in the king's name and seal it with the king's signet ring. For a decree which is written in the name of the king and sealed with the king's signet ring may not be revoked. He's telling them two things. I can't change the other one that I made. By the law of the land, which supersedes me even as king, once this decree has been made and sealed by the king, it can't be revoked. But he's also saying, now you create something to benefit this situation to the best of your ability, and you seal it with the ring that I've given you, and that will have every bit of the weight of authority that the previous one does. And if you haven't read ahead, it's about to get real interesting. Okay. Verse 9. So the king's scribes were called at that time in the 3rd month, that is the month of Sivan, on the 23rd day, and it was written according to all that Mordecai commanded to the Jews, the satraps, the governors, and the princes in the provinces which extended from India to Ethiopia, or Cush, 127 provinces. And to every province according to its script, and to every people according to their language, as well as to the Jews according to their script and their language. That's an important little tidbit. We discussed that earlier on in the book. When a king really wanted to proclaim the importance of something and the idea that whoever it was that was in charge of this situation better toe the line and better follow the rules, he would send a communique to them in their language, not just in the common language that would have to be translated, because you can lose stuff in translation. You can lose emphasis, especially. And so he sends this, Mordecai does this very kingly wise thing. He sends out this communication to everybody in their own language so that they can see this edict showed up. It's got the king's signature on the bottom. It's got the king's ring stamped into the wax. And it's written in my language, so this is important. I need to do this word for word. Verse 10, he wrote in the name of King Ahasuerus and sealed it with the king's signet ring and sent letters by couriers on horses, riding on steeds sired by the royal stud. Fast horses, in other words. The king wanted a fast horse because in every case, that King David was the same. When the king led in battle, they wanted the fastest horse. They needed to be able to lead the charge, but they also needed to be able to lead their troops to safety if the battle went poorly. And they can't do that if they're tangled up in the midst of all the other soldiery and cavalry and all that. They need to be on a fast horse. a good, strong, tall, fast horse. So they're on king's horses, riding on steeds that were sired by the king's stud. The king's main horse, this is the one that sires all the other horses that I use in my royal stables, because he's the guy. And the ponies that he creates, they grow up to be the guy. So they're riding those. And usually when a message that was important like this was sent out, each rider was sent with at least 3 horses so that they could do the old switcheroo. If you've ever watched an old Western, when they're having to do a long trip in a hurry, Pony Express, stuff like that, they bring 2-3 horses and they literally switch on the fly. They've got them all strung together and they'll pull the next one up in line. They'll already have a saddle on it and they will take their saddlebags over their shoulder and they will go, if they're in a super big hurry, they will hop from one saddle to the other and let that other horse trail back so that it doesn't have a rider on it, and they'll keep going. And that was pretty common practice, but apparently it's been pretty common practice since way before that, because the Mongols would do it. Genghis Khan's cavalry, if you will, his riders would do the same thing. When they were leading a charge, they would have multiple horses with them so that they could switch and always have a fresh horse underneath them so that they could continue their dreadful advance. So he's doing this. Verse 11, in them the king granted the Jews who were in each and every city the right to assemble and to defend their lives, to destroy, to kill, and to annihilate the entire army of any people or province which might attack them, including children and women, and to plunder their spoil on one day in all the provinces of King Ahasuerus, the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the day that the previous edict said, that's the day that you're allowed to go out and kill all the Jews. So he said, the same day, you have the authority that's been given to the people that want to hunt you, the authority has been given to you to defend yourselves however you can, even if it leads to these people's annihilation. You have that right. You've been given that right by the word of the king. The 13th day of the 12th month, the month of Adar. Verse 13, a copy of the edict to be issued as law in each and every province was published to all the peoples, so that the Jews would be ready for this day to avenge themselves on their enemies. The couriers, hastened and impelled by the king's command, went out, riding on the royal steeds, and the decree was given out at the citadel in Susa. Then Mordecai went out from the presence of the king in royal robes of blue and white, with a large crown of gold. Now that's kind of significant also. Kings wore purple because purple was a coloring for fabric that was next to impossible to get, and it was expensive. So only the kings wore purple. Blue was a close second, because the blue that they used to dye fabrics and things like that was not a color that occurred naturally. It was a mix that had to be made of various different florals and herbs and whatever else to come up with the tincture that would make a nice, bright, vibrant blue. So blue and white signified the white was also very hard, because you really had to work to get clean white. That in that day and age, white wasn't same as purple, same as blue. It was very difficult to get a garment pure white. And if there was anybody that had pure white garments, it was, well, in the case of the Hebrews, the priests, but in the case of every other kingdom, the royalty. So he puts him in blue and white, puts him in royal robes of blue and white, with a large crown of gold and a garment of fine linen and purple, in the city of Susa. And that garment of fine linen and purple, it's probably a sash. It's that he wouldn't be wearing a full thing of purple, but he would be wearing something that had purple on it, signifying, I'm wearing what I'm wearing by the decree of the king. I'm the king's guy. He said I'm to wear this. That's why I'm wearing it. So he has it on. Excuse me. And let's see. Where'd he go? A garment of fine linen and purple. And the city of Susa shouted and rejoiced. For the Jews there was light and gladness and joy and honor. in each and every province and in each and every city, whenever the king's commandment and his decree arrived, there was gladness and joy for the Jews, a feast and a holiday. And many, I love this, and many among the peoples of the land became Jews, for the dread of the Jews had fallen on them. Now, dread is another one of those words in the Bible that's used very akin to fear. In the proper context, dread and fear do not mean I'm afraid for my life. They weren't doing this for fire insurance. You know, we talk about people who get saved, but they're really only doing it because they're convinced that there's a hell and they don't want to go there. They don't really believe in God, Jesus, whatever it is, but they're going to accept whatever thing gets them out of trouble. So that it's referred to as fire insurance because you're keeping yourself out of hell. This is a very similar dynamic. This is people that it could be considered, a very similar dynamic. But it's not. The word dread here, as well as the word fear used in many other places around the Bible when it's talking about fear the Lord, things like that, it's awe. It's respectful. It's knowing and understanding that there is something more to this person or group of people as ordained by God, and there is power behind them that I do not understand and cannot fight against. So I'm not gonna. There's these people, these Jews, there's a power behind them. There's something, an influence that causes them to be saved and blessed and all of these wonderful things. And they, in turn, are a blessing to our community. Because of that, why on earth would we try to kill them? Let's join them. Let's start believing in their faith so we have that benefit as well. And it's a really neat thing to see that these people, many among the peoples of the land, became Jews. They said, you know what? I'm flipping the script. I'm going completely away from the pagan. I'm not going to worship the pagan gods. I've seen too much. Just in this situation, in the last however many years, just in this situation, to know that this is a God worth serving. And they chose to serve him. The whole nation received a revelation from God. They got to see how God worked in Esther's life, in Mordecai's life, as a result of those, in the king's life, in the lives of the king's enemies. And they didn't want to be God's enemies. They saw this. God revealed to them, this is the truth of the matter, and this is how. And the Hebrews rejoiced. The Jews, man, they were all about it. They end up in the next chapter, they create a festival, a new festival in their calendar, permanently in their calendar, because of this situation. They are joyful, they are rejoicing, they are on top of the world. And the people around them are seeing this joy and this celebration, and they're thinking to themselves, we want that in our lives. How can we get that in our lives? And that's the world we live in today. We serve a mighty, powerful, loving God. And he's always got our backs. Always. And when we live for him out loud, we don't have to be corner preachers. We don't have to be doom and gloom, the end is near. We don't have to do any of that. We just have to live out loud. That means the world around us can see and hear and relate to our belief and the benefit that we receive from that, the blessing that we get, and they want it. There are some of them that don't even know that that's what they want yet, but they want something. There's a God-shaped hole in each and every one of our souls that nothing else can fill, and people get tired after a while of trying to fill it with all the other stuff. the sex, the drugs, the alcohol, the rock and roll, the whatever it might be, they don't fill anything except your ears with noise. They keep you distracted, which is what Satan wants. But distraction only lasts so long before you start tripping over stuff and stumbling and falling into the rocks. If you've ever missed a step at your house as you're trying to get up the steps to your front porch, you missed a step and tumbled off of it over into the rocks and weeds in your desert landscaping, you understand, you understand that knowing the path, knowing the right path, and staying on it, and not being distracted by whatever it is that's going on around you, that's going to cause your whole journey to be easier. You don't have to spend time in the rocks and the dirt. You can get right up those steps. You can get right to that front door and in the nice, cool, air-conditioned room that you want to be in. You can get, you step over that curb instead of tripping over it. You can get into the nice, cool store where you can grocery shop. That all of that other, there's so much in our lives that we can see simple blessings that most people don't ever really pay attention to at all. But when we live in that place where we can love and appreciate our God, our Savior, who has done so much for us, who has blessed us with so much, that we live in that blessing, then the people around us get to see it. And they're going to be like these pagans. And they're going to say, I want that. What do you have? What's different about you? Those are powerful questions. Those are powerful statements. What's different about you? How can I get what you have? That fish has already taken the hook. Not even the hook. They're in a net. All you got to do is pull them up and say, here's the deal. Jesus said, I'll make you fishers of men, to his disciples. You're out here catching fish. You're making a living. I'm going to make you fishers of men. And I'm going to make you a life. And they didn't know it and understand it at first. But when he sought to make them a new life, he meant a new life forever. And they couldn't comprehend that yet. Not that early in their relationship with him. But they understood there was something about him that they needed. They needed. Nothing else filled the hole. Nothing else filled the void. But they saw Jesus and they said, that's him. That's what I need. That's what I need. Okay, how do I get that? He gives them the instructions. They throw down their nets, they beach their boats, and they follow him. We've got a world around us that desperately, desperately, desperately wants to fill that void in their soul, and they don't know how to do it. Or they do, and they fought it. When we have Jesus in us, when we are in Jesus, because it's all one and the same, we are God's hands and feet and voice. And we have a beautiful blessing and responsibility to deliver that message to everybody, to let everyone understand it's as simple as, I'm a sinner. I know there's something missing from my life that I can never fill with anything in this world. I recognize that Jesus is God. I recognize that he sacrificed for me, and I recognize that that sacrifice means that I have the opportunity to have what these people have and to share it with others. Because that's one of the greatest things about, a new Christian will just get fired up for telling other people about the difference that God has made in their lives. We tell them, it's as easy as this. You know you're a sinner. You know Jesus is God. You know He sacrificed everything for us so that we don't have to wonder or worry about what's next. And so that we can spend eternity in His family. You accept that. And you accept an incredible blessing and an incredible opportunity to bring more people into God's family. That's our job. That's why I do what I do. I don't do what I do because it's ever going to make me rich or famous or anything else. I do what I do because I'm so full of what God has blessed me with. I got to get it out. I got to share it. I got to let everybody know God has given me so much that I didn't deserve and prevented me from receiving so much that I did deserve. Mercy and grace. And I am compelled to share this with people. I can't not. I meet people that I've never met before in a social situation, in line at the store. Oh yeah, I'm a pastor. I pastor a little church over in Sunsites. I have online, It's the main reason that I made these goofy little business cards, because people want to know all the time, where do you preach? When do you preach? What's and either I have to spend a lot of time of explaining to them stuff that they're just going to probably forget because they're being told. Well, now I can say, this is me. This is what I do. And this is why. I can show them my little card with the most prominent message on it. It's Jesus. He gave all. And He did it. If it had just been one of us, He still would have done it. He still would have done it. Revelation. God has revealed Himself to us through His presence, through His Spirit, through His Word. Now we have the opportunity to deliver that kind of revelation to the world around us, everyone we know. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing to have in front of us, because it gives us the opportunity to pull everything off of ourselves and say, look to God. That's where the answers are. That's where the blessing is. It's not about how much money you make. It's not about how many people know your name and face. It's not about any of that, because that can all go wrong. Dirty, ugly wrong. But if you're revealing God to them, and that's what they see, that's who they hear, that's who they read about in this Word, they won't forget that. They won't forget that. I can die and turn to dust and blow away and not matter, except for the fact that I want it to be known that I was faithful. I want to hear, well done. And I know the way to do that is just keep following my Jesus. Let's pray. Father, thank you for this day. Thank you for this book. Thank you for the examples that we have through your word of how you move in the lives of those who are yours. I ask you to simply continue to move in our lives as you have. Help us to see the blessings. Help us to count the blessings and not count the cost. There is no cost too great to serve you. And we know that no matter how much we perceive the cost, we know that the blessings are so much richer. So, Father, I ask you just to guard us all through the rest of today, the rest of this week. For any of those who are missing from our group, whether it be here in person or online, I pray your health and healing and blessing upon them. I pray your protection over them. If they're traveling, I pray simply that your hand is upon them, that you will gather all of us under your wings. Give us that love and that truth and that blessing and that protection that we crave that we know only comes from one place, and that's you. And we'll continue to give you thanks and praise and glorify you for all of it. In Jesus' name, amen.